Right, so good afternoon and welcome to the Vermont Legislature's House Committee on Environment and Energy. This afternoon, we're going to continue taking testimony on S5, and we have with us via Zoom Brian Gray from the Energy Co-op of Vermont. Welcome, Brian Gray.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. If at all possible, could I share my screen?
Yes. You set up for that? Great. Thank you. Ready? You have.
I have the ability. Yep. Okay. I'm Brian Gray. I'm with the Energy Co-op of Vermont. Again, thank you for inviting me to testify on S5, the Affordable Heat Act. What I would like to do is introduce our company to you via a video that we have, if you don't mind bearing with me. Everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah.
I always start with asking people what their goal is. You know, everyone can say, yeah, I want to save some energy, but there are a lot of other things. Like I just can't keep warm in this room, or the heating system runs all the time.
It was always the goal to help our membership use less fossil fuels. And that's something that seemed like a lot more of a crazy idea 14 or 15 years ago.
You'd say we're still primarily a fuel oil dealer, but really it's been the mission of the co-op to get customers to use less of what we sell by introducing them to more energy efficient means of heating their homes and keeping their homes in condition.
If you're a member, you get our benefits, full 24-hour service department, an efficiency department. We sell pellets, do installations of heating equipment. A lot of people lately with the rebates have been leaning towards the heat pumps.
The culture in this company is different from anything that I've seen. Again, the philosophy that if we do everything that we're supposed to do and we guide customers in the right direction, they're going to end up using less oil. That's different from everybody else.
Lots of times with Paul's a great place to start. You get that energy audit done. You get almost a health report of your whole house.
People didn't build the houses. People didn't choose these technologies. No one chose that. You know, they're chosen by someone else at a different point in history. So we're not responsible for that individually. So it's got to be a societal shift. We're thinking about the next 5 or 10 or 15 years. And we're thinking about the next several decades or longer for the house. Now, people live in their house for a certain number of years, they sell it to someone else. This is like a utility, it's a public good. So the benefits are for multiple users of the home.
And the service department's mission is, among other things, to make sure that the heating oil equipment that's out there is running as well as it possibly can be, and that helps to reduce the amount of oil that it consumes.
And you do save 13 cents a gallon on fuel by being a member, and our member fee is $12 for the year.
A certain portion of everybody's $12 a year goes into oil bank. That's there to help our membership that's in need.
It's good that we're nonprofit, that we take a longer view. That's how this work needs to be carried out.
A lot of people like the fact that we are a co-op. We're owned by our members, so we do our best to try to help our members save money.
If there's a better solution out there that I can't offer you, we can point you to someone that can help you better than us too. That's part of our mission. We're trying to get you to use less and to save more money.
I think if there's kind of a bottom line of what we do, we try to make our customers happy. And it also saves a lot of money and makes the house more healthy and comfortable and energy efficient. That's a big thing.
Thank you for indulging me to play that video. We are a very small energy corporation based in Colchester, Vermont. We have about 3,500 customers. We deliver about 1 million gallons of fossil fuel per year and 1,000 tons of wood pellets. We install 200 to 300 heat pumps each year, and we perform about 120 energy audits and weatherize about 80 homes per year. As shown in the video, we are truly different in terms of a fuel dealer. Our goal is to help our membership keep their homes comfortable and safe while making their energy dollars go further. Our company is proof that a fuel dealer can operate successfully in the energy transformation field. So a brief look at what our current fuel costs are. Over the past year, our customers have been getting financially squeezed from all sides. Inflation has caused everyday staples like eggs, meat, and fish to increase dramatically. Gasoline and diesel have doubled the cost of traveling to work and back, and the spike in heating fuel costs have made heating their homes nearly twice as expensive as in the past. All of these factors combined are putting the huge pressures on families' budgets, especially in the lower and middle income homes. Heating oil and kerosene are up over $2 per gallon over the past few years. In real dollars, this represents an increase on average family home of about $1,300 per year, bringing the cost to heat an average home with fuel oil to just shy of $3,000 per year. In addition to the average price increases, the daily volatility of pricing has created situations of inequities in day-over-day fuel purchases for our members. Historically, we've never seen such swings from day to day in pricing. This volatility also increased risks on fuel dealers when offering products such as pre-buys, caps, and budgets. The past 18 months have been a completely different game in terms of fuel pricing than we've historically seen. In many cases, blockwood and wood pellets have also increased in a similar fashion, predominantly due to the cost of trucking and labor. So when we take a look at the cost of alternatives, primarily heat pumps, as we compare those costs, there's no denying that with the current fuel prices, the per unit cost to heat a home with a heat pump is significantly less expensive than most fossil fuels. Natural gas continues to be the least cost option, but is only available to a small percentage of Vermonters. Most Vermont homes would see a financial benefit to switching their primary heating from fossil fuels to wood systems or heat pumps. With heat pumps, there's also the added benefit of cooling your home. A heat pump is much more efficient than a window-type air conditioner, thus saving money in the summer months as well when you're cooling your home. So how will S5 affect our company? As noted, the Energy Co-op is a unique fuel dealer and is well positioned to utilize the mechanics of S5 to continue to grow our business. I see the following changes occurring. In the HVAC and weatherization portion of our company, revenue is currently 45% of our total revenues. We expect with the right incentives, more homeowners will be adopting heat pump technology and weatherizing homes at a rapid pace. This will allow the Energy Co-op to grow and expand our services in these areas if the workforce is available. We purchase all of our fossil fuels from terminals located in Burlington and Essex, Vermont. As a reseller within the state, we do not anticipate being an obligated party. With anticipated the credits generated by our business in the heat pump and weatherization side of the business, we hope to be able to discount the fossil fuel delivered to our customers, thus easing the impact. S5 requires over time the carbon intensity values for clean biodiesel to be reduced. Our company will need to reevaluate if the upfront capital infrastructure costs, as well as anticipated customer demand, will make it feasible to offer this heating alternative option. We do anticipate more accounting requirements and government oversight, which will add to our expenses. We anticipate as more and more customers switch away from fossil fuels, our delivery cost per gallon will increase, and we will need to be passed on to our remaining fossil fuel customers. How will S5 affect our members and customers? Well, the cost of the credits is currently unknown. Whether it's 5 cents a gallon or $1.50 per gallon, those costs will be passed on to our members and customers. Fuel oil delivery in Vermont is a competitive business, which keeps margins very thin and very little room to absorb new expenses. As more and more members and customers move towards clean heat solutions, the increased cost of delivery will be borne by the remaining fossil fuel users. Customers and members will be faced with a choice: pay more for fossil fuel or pay the upfront cost of transitioning to other fuels. Either choice will hit our customers' wallets. While we do not know how much S5 will add to a gallon of fuel oil, we do know how much transition into a cleaner technology costs. Upfront cost of heat pumps and weatherizing a home is a significant obstacle for our customers. Heat pumps can average anywhere between $5,000 and $20,000. Weatherizing a home could be $6,500 to $15,000, and in some cases more, depending on the size of the home. Current rebates and tax incentives only cover a small portion of that upfront cost. Payback periods for the customers is very long, and disposable available income for these types of items are out of the reach of most Vermont households. So things to think about as you're contemplating S5. Steep incentives and readily available financing for homeowners for heat pumps and weatherization is imperative to defeat the upfront cost obstacle. On-bill financing seems to be a really attractive way to make this affordable. Delivery of incentives must be streamlined and made easier. Searching and compiling rebates from the feds, from the state, from Tier 3 programs, efficiency utilities, and other entities, and then figuring out income thresholds or pre-existing conditions is enough to make a lot of consumers just give up on the whole process. The cold climate heat pumps we install are tested to function down to an ambient temperature of -13 degrees. Vermont historically will reach this temperature multiple times in a typical winter. We never recommend removing an existing central heating system unless the homeowner has an alternative heat backup to the heat pumps. Workforce in Vermont is a significant hurdle to providing weatherization and electrification transformation. We currently struggle to find any new employees to help meet the increased demand. The scale of transformation called for by S5 seems unattainable when Vermont's current and anticipated workforce. While electrification may be the solution for many, as fossil fuel demand is reduced, the cost per gallon to deliver the fuel to the homeowner will increase and be passed on to the customer. So with that, I'd love to open it up to any questions that you might have.
Thank you for your testimony. Representative Sibilia.
Brian, thank you for your testimony and coming in and sharing your experience with us today. Your company is really, I think, the gold standard in terms of what we're hoping to see here in helping our Vermonters transition off of fossil fuels. So thank you for providing us kind of some examples here. I had a number of questions actually for you. One was your customers. How has the 200% increase in fossil fuels in the heating oil in the last 2 years been impacting your customers, and what is happening as a result of that?
Well, it's definitely a mixed results in terms of affordability. Some of our customers don't really bat an eye at $2 increase, and some have to choose between heating their home and dinner that night. So it's a wide disparity. It's almost brought on by, a lot of folks are just in complete disbelief and wrapping your mind around a global market is very difficult. And we spend a lot of time trying to explain what drives fossil fuel pricing and how it affects our individual customers. And like I said, it's all over the board, but it presents hardship to our lower and middle income customers.
And so is it increasing demand for your weatherization and other services that reduce fossil fuel usage?
It has, absolutely. So we're seeing a lot more interest in terms of offsetting fossil fuel usage, not only by looking at alternatives, but we're seeing a lot of people turning the thermostats down. Our use per customer this past winter was significantly less than what we've seen in the past. We've also seen folks who have purchased heat pumps and were primarily using them as cooling devices to actually using them as heating devices over this past winter, which was kind of refreshing to see. But it took that steep increase in fossil fuels to make that happen.
Okay, and in terms of who is trying to get off of fossil fuels right now, are you seeing mostly those customers as low and moderate income, or are these more folks with means that are bringing you in to reduce their fossil fuel usage?
Yeah, it's primarily folks that are actually going through that do have the capital to do so. We do have a lot of folks interested in the lower to moderate income, but as I noted, paybacks are quite long, and having that upfront cost is a barrier to those folks in the lower, especially the middle income brackets. Lower income have avenues that just a lot of folks in that middle income bracket do not.
Thank you. I have two more questions for you. One is, how can we help other businesses transition as you have? And this has really been a longstanding question for me that I've posed to the fuel dealers probably multiple times over the last 4 or 5 years, as we've considered such things as a fuel tax, which they had opposed. As we continue to talk about this whole system is changing and transitioning, this energy system, how are we going to help these businesses transition? And we haven't gotten a lot of feedback about the help that they need to transition their businesses. Do you have any advice for us on how we can help our smaller fossil fuel dealers transition?
Yeah, I think it's a different discussion with smaller versus medium to larger companies. I think there's a lot of doubt in the minds of smaller fuel oil dealers to grow other sides of the business besides just going and picking up oil and bringing it to someone's house. They may not have even a service department. So that transition is very difficult for the small fuel dealers, just because number one, they don't have the expertise in-house. And number two, and this goes for everyone, is workforce is a significant challenge. Just trying to find folks that we can train to do some of these things is a significant barrier. And, I think that in addition to just not having any staff to begin with, the small folks are just going to have a really hard time making that transition. Now, when you start talking to medium to larger companies, some folks are already doing quite a bit of the heat pump installations. I'm not sure anyone's doing weatherization in like the scale that we are doing, but there's a lot of folks that are utilizing their existing service departments to take up heat pump water heaters, those types of things. And quite frankly, it's a profitable business. And if that can be tapped into and shown to these companies, it makes a lot of sense. I talked about our revenues being about 45% from weatherization and heat pump installations. Quite frankly, a volatile year like we had with heating oil this past year, we didn't make any money. We actually lost money in the fuel oil business, but we made significant dollars to be able to offset that by doing the installations that we're doing. So, I think bottom line talks to a lot of folks in terms of what business ventures they want to get into, and just having that clarity and understanding that with the correct workforce, a bottom line can be obtained by introducing these new product lines.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Pat, and then Smith.
Actually, a follow-up question in terms of, I'm wondering, in terms of people who end up replacing and changing the type of heating source, what I'm wondering, I mean, you had noted that it tends to be people who can afford to do that, but what about people who have to do it? Their heating, whatever they're heating with has reached the end of its useful life and they have to do something. Is that an opportunity to make a change in the type of heat, or would people just be replacing, if they're using propane, they're going to keep using propane?
It's definitely a time where you could change your fuel source. At this time, we would not recommend to any of our customers to just install a heat pump and go from there, given that the operating temperatures do not match Vermont's climate. That would lead them into some significant issues unless their home was very well insulated and weatherized. Where you would have some really good opportunity is at the low income scale, where maybe crisis fuel or any of our agencies that are going out to replace those types of equipment would also provide a heat pump or some other means of heating system. It would be a great opportunity then for the low income folks. Folks who are paying it on their own, we always advise to have a backup. So, they certainly could just put a heat pump in and put a pellet stove or a wood stove. That would be a fine alternative. Or they could put a heat pump in with electric resistance backup. So it's certainly an opportunity. It's just a matter of when your system fails. If it fails on an evening where it's 20 below, you have to make the choice that's going to get you heat the quickest, right? So the decision point is tougher when it comes to end of life. You'd want to do this, try to plan this strategically before end of life.
Representative Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Do you feel that your customers are transitioning at a good pace on their own?
I guess you'd have to define good pace, but yes, our customers are transitioning on their own.
You're seeing more people go to something a little bit greener and a little bit more environmentally friendly.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think in combination of it's a win-win, right? So it's good for the environment, but the way we approach it, it's also good for your wallet. So we're making sure that folks understand that when they're making their decisions.
In your opinion, do you feel that S5 is going to force people into changing the way that they heat their home?
It's going to force customers to pay more, whether it's paying upfront for the infrastructure they need, or whether it's paying for those credits downstream. And again, not knowing exactly what those credits are going to cost, as there's so much rhetoric going on in that field. It's hard to say what the effect will be, but ultimately, we've seen over the last 2 years with natural market forces increasing the cost of fuel, much more interest in converting to cheaper heating solutions.
Right. Thank you.
Representative Stebbins.
Thanks so much, Chair. Good afternoon. You mentioned that folks are shifting, but you also said that the folks who can't are the ones who, are making choices between eating their home or having dinner. I think that's how you phrased it. And you said for those folks, they need on-bill financing and, streamline of incentives. So I'm wondering, I believe we have someone coming in to testify later this week from Vermont Housing Finance Agency, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of sort of those wraparound services for lower and moderate income Vermonters for like on-bill financing or incentives and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the on-bill financing is makes so much sense on so many different levels. And again, I'm not deeply involved in the creation or distribution of this product, but I've been around the peripheral, and it kind of goes hand in hand with thinking of a house as a utility, right? So it's going to pass from customer to customer as people sell their homes, and making an investment upfront for what have you, solar panels or heat pumps or weatherization. If you're only planning on being in that home for 10 years, payback is not good. You know, it takes time to mature the payback on some of these different types of measures. So if you could spread that over, say, a 30-year period of time, and the commitment would flow from one homeowner to the next, you would have so much more uptake in terms of customers not having to worry about payback over a short period of time. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, thanks.
Representative Sevilla.
Yes. Brian, you talked about cost and the effect that S5 will have on customers. So customers that are taking advantage of the clean heat measures that would be incentivized as part of this, are you saying that their costs are going to be going up? Wouldn't their fossil fuel usage be going down?
No, their actual usage costs will be going down. Heat pumps are cheaper to operate than the current pricing of fossil fuels, except for natural gas. Natural gas continues to be cheaper than the output from heat pumps or wood pellets or what have you. What I'm saying is the upfront costs are the barrier. Whatever incentives that we can develop, or maybe some sort of payback mechanism, such as we were just speaking, would alleviate those upfront costs. Where folks will see increases is certainly the folks who do not make the change, right? So regardless if we are tacking on an extra 5 cents or an extra $1 to fuel oil for the credits, that certainly is going to impact existing fuel oil customers. Plus, as fuel oil customers make that transition, we as a delivery company, it will cost us more to go from house to house to house because each house is using less. So those expenses are going to go up for those folks who are still utilizing fossil fuels as their primary heat source.
Thank you. And Brian, I want to thank you again for coming and talking to us today. I know we've got a lot of great knowledge for us and experience to share. So thank you.
Not a problem. I'm always very happy to talk about the Energy Co-op. I'm very proud of what we do and how we do it. And, you know, from my perspective, it's a win-win for the company and our customers and members.
Is it a question?
I just want to make a quick comment, if I could.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want to say it does not surprise me how the Energy Co-op of Vermont has evolved in terms of its diversification and stuff. I just wanted committee members to know that I was the founding board member of the co-op, probably about 2 years before it started having customers, late 1990s. And although things like heat pumps didn't exist at that time, it doesn't surprise me at all that as things developed, the co-op, I have not been involved with the co-op in years and years and years, but it's not surprised me to see that how the co-op embraced being a more of a all energy type of a service organization.
Representative Smith.
I'll be quick. Brian, I have one more question for you. I want to see if I can word this the right way. If S5 should become reality, families that are going to be losing my train of thought here. I'm going to pass on this. I've got a question, but I'll get back to you on. I just lost what I was going to try to say.
Yeah.
So I'll wait.
Thank you again for your testimony.
Thank you for inviting me.
Members and guests, we're going to transition now to a slightly more condensed format with witnesses. So we have a bunch of witnesses we hope to get to this afternoon, and we've given them all 10 minutes. And so we need to be really respectful of that and aware that there are lots of people who want to speak. We also need to be aware of the capacity in our room, which is 16 technically. And so I really need to prioritize folks who are on the agenda and invite Dan Fingus to please come and join us in the witness seat. Yeah, the easiest way to figure that out is there's a chair for everyone that can be in the room that we have the capacity for. Sorry about that, but we do have air quality issues that are very real in our room.
Oh, sleep.
Yeah, if you don't have a chair, to makes John in order would be good. That person is. Yeah, I don't know.
To be clear, you can't, it can't be standing.
Yeah, we need to have 16. Thank you.
That's all right.
We'll be in, yeah, right. So with that, welcome Dan Fingus.
Thank you, Chair Sheldon, Vice Chair Sibilia, and members of the House Environment Energy Committee for having me here today to testify about S5, the Affordable Heat Act. My name is Dan Fingus. I'm the Movement Politics Director at Rights and Democracy, which we call RAD for short. Speaking to people across Vermont, whether at an organizing meeting, around a kitchen table, or even in the halls of the State House, there is a theme that consistently emerges during the winter. Heating is an expensive burden. And for people who are working for low wages or single parenting or renting a unit in a drafty old building, these costs can be the difference between balancing a budget and not being able to afford the month's bills, or making trade-offs with other essentials like food. The problem is only getting worse. In the past 2 years, we have seen the cost of fuel oil rise by almost $2 a gallon, and kerosene has risen similarly. Propane prices, which were already high, have also risen more slowly but steadily. Nearly 40% of Vermont households heat with oil or kerosene. While wealthier families may be able to absorb these costs to a certain point, low and moderate income households are already being hit hard. And not only are these fuels expensive, they are also dirty and produce high emissions. The heating sector is one of the biggest sources of climate pollution in our state. As a member-led grassroots organization working to win changes that improve the lives of working Vermonters, RAD believes that Vermont must do its part to ensure a just transition to a clean energy future that mandates renewable energy and ends our reliance on dirty, volatile fossil fuels. And we must guarantee that everyone benefits, especially Vermonters who have been most impacted by past and current harms. No matter what we look like, where we live, or how much money we make, we all deserve to be able to keep the heat on and stay warm in the winter without worrying about how we will pay for it and how it is impacting our health. By passing S5, the Affordable Heat Act this year, we have the opportunity to make meaningful strides towards this vision. The Affordable Heat Act will require fossil fuel importers to invest in and offer clean and affordable and price-stable heating options to all Vermonters, with a focus on weatherization and other solutions that reduce energy use. A strong Affordable Heat Act offers a path towards a cleaner, greener future for us all, while ensuring that low and moderate income households, including renters, can benefit from this transition. Unlike a similar bill that failed last year, which RAD did not support, S5 contains specific targets to center equity and affordability, accounts more fully for life cycle emissions of a given heat source, and requires these to decrease over time, which will phase out biofuels and incentivize energy use mitigation. I want to highlight what RAD sees as some of the key improvements in S5 and follow that with some suggested changes. RAD has been in discussion with the Environmental Justice Network, a network led by BIPOC leaders from across Vermont. And based on their feedback, we developed some suggestions to further strengthen the bill and ensure that nobody is left behind. First, I want to talk about some parts of the bill we see as highlighted that we need to ensure stay in the bill. When it comes to carbon intensity score and life cycle accounting portions of the bill, we really support the language that is in there, that was strengthened in the Senate. It's calling for a transition that is based on declining carbon intensity, clear and measurable manner, with a carbon intensity score of 20 or below by 2050. We think this is key to creating a true transition needed for Vermonters. We also like that there's an improved accounting system of life cycle emissions that is fit Vermont specifically, and how it expressly looks at the fuel pathway from the feedstocks all the way to the emissions, accounts for fugitive emissions, creates baseline emissions for methane that is based on methane capture regulations, and requires a review of consequences by the PUC to ensure that the standard is working as designed. We need to make sure that this review examines all sources of our fuels and also ensures maybe another benefit we could add to the bill is ensuring that exploitative land use, especially on tribal lands, aren't being accepted as clean heat. Another huge part to RAD's support of S5 this year is its focus on equity and affordability. Specifically, we like that it prioritizes customers with low, moderate income, those households with the highest energy burdens, and renter households with tenant-paid energy bills. It says that the design shall ensure all customers have an equitable opportunity to participate in and benefit from clean heat measures regardless of heating fuel use, income level, geographic location, residential building type, or homeownership status. We also appreciate the fact that there is a named percentage for low and moderate income households, the 16%. For each of these groups, at least half of that needs to be in mitigation measures. And we think it should be maybe even higher, 75% of mitigation measures. We know that the way for low income and moderate income Vermonters to get the most out of this bill is to have as much of it be mitigation, weatherization, heat pumps, so they can see those cost savings. And so the alarming thoughts on how much a gallon might be raised by the system won't be seen by the lowest income Vermonters. We find the language for low-income Vermonters and renters who pay energy bills to be crucial to ensure an equitable program, but we also know that there are ways to make it even more equitable and ensure that affordability for low-income households is the real outcome of this bill. This includes our recommendation to change the mitigation requirement for low and moderate incomes to 75% of retired credits to ensure the cost savings are seen by as many Vermonters as possible. We also need to protect the most needy Vermonter households, and by creating a just transition, and that means we're ensuring that $0 out-of-pocket options are available to all low-income Vermonters, and that they are prioritized first to get that mitigation work done quickly to see the cost benefit of this work. This includes a strong focus on renters. We believe that programs like RAP and other tariffed on-bill financing measures are effective ways to meet this need if all renters are included. With these elements, we echo the testimony heard in the Senate by Maura Collins from the Vermont Housing Finance Agency and others. To this end, we are asking for the removal of consider from subpoint 3 of the equitable distribution of clean heat measures. So it reads, the commission shall front load the credit requirements for customers with low income and moderate income so that the greatest proportion of clean heat measures reach Vermonters with low income and moderate income in the early years. Removing the consider makes it a push and a mandate, and takes it from makes it something that you all can control and not a decision made by the PUC. We also appreciate the language calling for renters and those with socioeconomically, racially, and geographically diverse backgrounds to be a part of the equity advisory group. Some of that language was put in because of requests we made in the Senate. We'd also love to see a little bit more specificity as to who is in the equity advisory group, including adding explicit representation of low-income Vermonters in the Clean Heat Advisory Group, adding representation from someone currently utilizing an energy assistance program, including but not limited to LIHEAP, fuel assistance, financial energy coaching services, Efficiency Vermont's low-income focused programs. We think this can be done by either making that a specific person that you name, or by requiring that the community action agencies and or Efficiency Vermont select individuals in these programs as their representatives. And we'd also love to see an addition of representation from Indigenous and enrolled tribal member as a representative. We also must say that this bill alone won't be enough to address the inequities in our energy sector, and urge that this committee and the full legislature work to pass legislation that clarifies rental owners' obligations to take advantage of clean heat measures so that their tenants can access the benefits of the bill, and prioritize the passage of bills that achieve these measures to ensure renters aren't left behind. We also ask that you work to pass the rental registry bill currently under consideration by the legislature, a renewable energy standard reform bill so that we can transition, as we transition away from burning fossil fuels to the electric sector, it is as renewable and sustainable as possible, and continue to work on bills and programs that focus on rental weatherization. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. And we do have a couple minutes for questions. Do members have questions? And I trust that you have provided your written testimony to us. That's impactful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Representative Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I didn't hear you say the word free, but I'm going to ask you, low-income families, low-income members of the BIPOC community, are you suggesting that installations be done at no charge to these individuals?
Definitely no upfront charge. And I think if they meet the socioeconomic standards of weatherization programs, then no charge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think it might be a good idea if everybody knew what kind of incentives these families potentially could sign up for? If you have a $5,000 or $6,000 installation and the state's going to give them $4,000, that's great, but you're not going to know until this bill becomes a reality. So if it does happen and the state says, well, we'll give you $1,500 toward this $5,000, that's still going to put them out in the cold. Would you agree?
Yeah, obviously the incentives have to be right. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's good that the wholesalers are kind of the ones responsible, because they're going to have a vested interest to find folks to get the work done so they can get the credits. And so they're going to have a vested interest in sharing the communication about how much a certain customer of theirs can actually get back and the process. And they're going to be able to do that within their region and within their service area.
So if the wholesalers are held responsible, they're going to pass those expenses on to people that are going to be paying for fossil fuels or any fuel as far as that goes. Am I correct?
Well, I mean, yeah, as they're paying hugely high prices now. I mean, the status quo is I don't think something to be defended because it is so bad for Vermonters. There are people that are suffering now. And so to do nothing would be really catastrophic, I think, because we keep unchecked price increases on the poorest Vermonters will continue. And so we have to take action.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
You know, I did, and I know we're out of time. I just want to thank you for pointing out your last statement about the status quo not being something to defend. I thank you.
Yep. Thank you all.
Thank you again for your testimony. Next, we have Stuart Blood from Thetford Center. Welcome, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair Sheldon and members of the committee. I'm Stuart Blood. I live in Thetford Center. I'm going to start by saying I think there are many flaws with S5, but with my allotted 10 minutes, I'm only going to focus on one area, which is the special provisions provided in the bill for Vermont gas systems. I'm also going to preface my remarks by saying they may be more complex than what we've heard from the bill's advocates, because those accounts have mainly steered away from nuances and unforeseen consequences. Unfortunately, the devil and the bill's flaws are in the details, and they really need to be discussed fully. So with that as a preamble, I'm going to say what I'd like you to understand. S5 will allow VGS to get clean heat credits for fuel that won't be burned in Vermont. Their customers will be burning the same fossil fuel that they currently get, the only difference being they will be charged extra for the so-called attributes of renewable natural gas. The actual RNG will be burned in another state, and ironically, that RNG will create greater emissions than energy from a less profitable use of the biogas from which the RNG is produced. S5 is drafted will treat RNG as reducing greenhouse gas emissions compared to fossil gas, but in reality, net emissions will increase compared to the less costly alternative of generating energy by burning the biogas on the site where it is created. So let's move on to what is RNG and why is it a climate concern. RNG is made from biogas. Biogas is a mixture of methane and carbon dioxide that is captured from landfills or produced in digesters at wastewater treatment plants and animal farms. Raw biogas can be used as a fuel to generate electricity or heat, but it can't be put into pipelines. The RNG made from biogas, on the other hand, is nearly pure methane, and it can be mixed with fossil gas in pipelines. Methane is a greenhouse gas, 80 times worse than carbon dioxide. That means that even minor leaks of unburned fossil gas or RNG constitute outsized greenhouse gas emissions and therefore need to be considered in the life cycle emissions accounting. There's a track record for RNG in Vermont. The PUC recently approved a contract for RNG from a landfill in upstate New York. It is by far the largest for VGS and the first since the enactment of the Global Warming Solutions Act. The PUC's orders approving that one and the previous contract suggest a roadmap for how RNG will be handled if S5 is approved, is enacted. We know that virtually none of the out-of-state RNG that VGS purchases is actually delivered to Vermont. We know it because VGS, the Department of Public Service, and the PUC have all acknowledged it. We know that VGS's contracts have contained language regarding the, quote, physical delivery, unquote, of RNG that is nearly identical to the language in S5, and that the PUC has interpreted that to mean that VGS can sell fossil gas and label it renewable simply by retaining the RNG attributes, even though the actual RNG is burned elsewhere. We know that the amount of RNG produced in state is tiny, only about 1% of the total supply of VGS. We know that from testimony and that continuing to sell methane is part of VGS's business plan for the next many years, probably through 2050. We know that RNG is far more expensive to produce than fossil gas. The Department of Public Service testified in the New York landfill case that VGS's own analysis, quote, demonstrates that the proposed contract is one of the most expensive means for VGS to reduce emissions. There's only one piece of the puzzle missing for VGS, that puzzle being how to continue to sell the same old gas without running afoul of the Global Warming Solutions Act. That missing piece is provided by the special treatment VGS gets in S5, specifically the unique ability to get clean heat credit for a fuel that will not be burned in Vermont. So what does S5 miss? Federal regulations already require landfill biogas to be captured and controlled to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is already accomplished in two ways on site. A typical method of control is burning off or flaring the gas. The idea being that CO2 produced is far less harmful than releasing unburned methane. A better method used by the landfills in Coventry, Vermont and Lebanon, New Hampshire is to generate electricity by burning the raw biogas on site. That energy can legitimately be considered zero emissions because it is generated with no additional emissions compared to flaring. That zero emissions energy generation must be considered the baseline against which alternative uses of landfill biogas are compared. The RNG that VGS purchases from landfills adds greenhouse gas emissions. First, from the energy required to process the raw biogas. Second, from methane released during processing. And third, from methane emissions during the transport through hundreds of miles of leaky pipelines to the user. VGS claims the carbon intensity of the New York RNG is only 57% that of fossil gas, but the biogas from which it was created can generate energy on site with a carbon intensity of 0. Think of it this way. You started with a fuel that generates emissions-free energy. You've turned it into a high emissions fuel. Should you get clean heat credits because you're substituting it for a fuel with even higher emissions? So I don't know whether you have my written comments in front of you, but there is on the last page Okay, a graphic that illustrates that point. You may think, surely the life cycle accounting required by S5 will prevent such a perverse outcome, but you'd be wrong. The life cycle accounting only determines a carbon intensity value for each fuel. If you look closely at the section on carbon intensity of fuels on page 22 of the bill, you'll see what I mean. Fuels qualify for credits based solely on their carbon intensity scores, even if those fuels are displacing zero emission sources. RNG from New York will have a higher carbon intensity than the biogas it's made from, but with a computed value of 44, it will be eligible for credits at least through 2050. Remember, we're talking about a fuel here that will never be delivered to Vermont, so it will not displace fossil fuel use in our state. How can this flaw be fixed? Simplest, most obvious way is to disqualify RNG entirely. The fuel could still allow credits for biogas that is turned into energy at the site of production. Richard Coward addressed this issue in a recent webinar. He said, S5 qualifies RNG, quote, only if it can be proven that methane would otherwise have been vented and wouldn't have been reduced to some other existing regulatory framework, unquote. That's what S5's actually said, then it would disqualify landfill gas and remove the specific flaw. But the bill doesn't have that language. If the architect of the clean heat standard says that that is the intention, then the language should be explicit. That can be done with a simple one-sentence amendment, which is included in my handout. I can skip that in the interest of time.
I think skip to it.
Skip.
Oh, you only
Okay,
have
I will.
about a minute left. So
Okay, let me get back to it then. Let me just summarize.
I think we get your point on the flaw. I think the solution would be really helpful.
Okay, so the solution is this one sentence amendment. Renewable natural gas shall not qualify unless that particular gas, A, would otherwise have been vented, and B, no other regulation presently in force would require the biogas from which it was derived to be reduced, flared, or captured. So if I could just, final paragraph in summary, if S5 is enacted in the current form, VGS will continue to sell gas that is almost entirely fossil fuel. Its customers will pay extra for renewable gas that customers of another gas utility in another state will burn. That renewable gas will result in greater greenhouse gas emissions that would come from the energy production of burning on site, the raw biogas. This will be a truly perverse outcome for a legislation named the Affordable Heat Act. The life cycle accounting of emissions described in S5 does not address the problem. The problem can be fully addressed by disqualifying RNG. It can be mitigated with a simple one-sentence addition to the bill, which I just read. Final point, if I could. VGS continues to supply methane. Whether its carbon intensity is nominally 79 or 44, but if it does that, it can never reach the 2050 requirements for 80% emissions reduction and net zero, no matter what other measures it takes. For Vermont as a state to meet those requirements, other fuel providers will need to disproportionately decarbonize, and that isn't an efficient or fair way to meet the carbon, the emissions reductions requirements. That concludes my remarks. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you for your testimony. I think with